Welcome to Jurassic World.
Good morning, guests. Welcome to Jurassic World Minute, where we visit Jurassic World 1 minute at a time. I'm Brad.
I'm Dave.
Click, 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 click. On this episode, we'll be discussing minute 20 of Jurassic World. Dave, before we get to that, over at JurassicPedia.com, there's a big article here written by yourself. The Integrated Behavioural Raptor Intelligence Study, Project IBRIS.
The IBRIS project is something interesting, and we really don't get anything about it from the first movie, despite it kind of being the focus of the movie. We get some discussion of it from viral media from the Masrani site, and that's where kind of a lot of this information initially came from, is from there, because it's not even mentioned. The IBRIS project was a kind of attempt to not just behaviorally but genetically alter the raptors as well. Is basically taking some of the earlier design or earlier iterations that InGen had already completed, like the ones that we've seen from the first two movies, and attempting to kind of create a more docile version of them. And some of the photos that were released on the InGen site, or on the Masrani site, the backdoor site, was of recolored photoshops of the Jurassic Park 1 raptors. And so, for example, you get two in here that are kind of brown. You get one in here that's kind of like a purplish brown gray with this little hint of a bluish stripe, kind of like a early prototype to blue. Mm-hmm. And it's remarked as rejected because it was too aggressive. Same as the other two that they show you here. They show one that's orange that looks like it could almost be a male that was rejected for being too aggressive, and another one that's kind of like the last one but more of a brighter blue with a dark blue stripe, again too aggressive. And so it was kind of this genetic attempt that to breed the aggression out of the velociraptors. And we kind of get Owen kind of discuss it a bit more in some of those videos that Maisie watches in Fallen Kingdom, where he talks about how the first three successful attempts that they had gotten, Charlie, Delta, and Echo, they didn't really show as much intelligence or remorse as Blue did, which was really kind of the biggest success story of the IBRIS project. Blue had this kind of concern or care that you might find in, say, a wolf puppy. You are able to, as they showed in the video in Fallen Kingdom, when Owen pretended to show weakness, Charlie jumped him, and Charlie was, I think it was Charlie, or it was one of them. She was, I think, called a survivor from the second group or something like that. But yeah, she was one of the ones that showed the more desirable traits than I guess the rest of the batch that was bred and presumably destroyed for being too aggressive or unpredictable.
Yeah, it's sort
Blue
of
was sorry. Go.
I was just going to quickly say, it's sort of interesting there that if she's the oldest, we see this a lot of times where something's created and they're trying to recreate it again and not being able to get back, whether Blue was more of a fluke or something matched that they needed to, but they weren't exactly aware of what exactly they did to get her to, which I suppose adds to how more important she is going into Fallen Kingdom, where they want her and what she is, and not so much making their own version for the Indoraptor.
I think Blue, Owen calls her in those videos the latest version so much, in that when Owen pretended to show kind of weakness when he bent over, exposed his neck, and pretended to cry, Blue showed intrigue and kind of wanting to connect versus wanting to eat and attack. It showed that she was displaying instincts beyond just eat, poop, live, you know?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you get with, like, for example, most babies, human babies, they have very primal instincts. Their only instinct is to eat, poop, and live. They don't really show anything beyond that. And so that's where Owen realized that if he got Blue on his side, she would be the bridge that would get the other raptors on his side. And so we see some interesting things later on in this scene that we're going to be covering in the next couple minutes, because Blue seems to be the only one that truly has that mutual respect thing going on, and the rest of the raptors follow her lead, not Owen's.
Yep. And this is all sort of brought up all the way back, and we've talked about version numbers and that before, with that conversation between Wu and Hammond about some of these animals are just too dangerous. We've got to dumb them down a bit for our own safety, or safety of the guests. But
yeah, and so Project IBRIS was kind of so a success. Vic Hoskins, who commissioned it, obviously saw it as a success and wanted to start performing field tests, such as releasing the raptors to fight the Indominus, and Masrani quickly shot that down. He's like, absolutely not, that's not happening. And of course, when Masrani died, it happened anyway, and you could say it was a success, because if they weren't facing the Indominus, it probably would have worked. The only reason it didn't was because the Indominus figured out a way to communicate with the raptors that turned them against the handlers, you know?
Yeah, but see, that's the other thing too. Going after the Indominus wasn't what they were created for. But that could also explain why the raptors seem a bit more docile or whatever here in this film, and not so manic and wild like what we see in The Lost World and that.
Yeah, they were basically genetically bred to be specifically, in more so in Hoskins' mind, animals of war, but more to be docile, kind of castrated versions of the raptors, if you that we saw in the first two movies, if you will.
Yeah. And we can talk about the whole training and what they want to train them to do next minute, because we might have a third voice on there to discuss that with us. But
well, another thing that's interesting about this, not just this project, about Blue as well, is there does seem to be limits to her compassion and kind of memory recognition, not so much recognition of a person, but recognition of a pack companion. Because in Fallen Kingdom, the first time we see Blue and we see Owen try to communicate with her, he's doing the clicky button thing, and he throws like a chicken leg or something at her, and she doesn't react. It hits her in the snout, she growls at him. She did it. So the training doesn't seem to have this kind of. It doesn't. It's not like a dog where you train them when they're a puppy and it sticks. She has the potential to return to being feral. You know.
Well, I see that scene as more of where the hell are you been, or you left me. But yeah, and it's sort of, we don't get to see what the outcome of that would have been, because of course Ted Levine turns up and tranks or shoots. But
so it's interesting because at a later point in the film, the more she spent time with him when she's doing the surgery, when Owen's there for the surgery, it does seem that he is able to kind of reconnect with her before and then fully form a kind of bond with her that he had before releasing her back into the Pacific Northwest. So now she's camper's problems.
Yeah, yep.
Now they're gonna have to just think about bears and cougars. Now they got raptors.
That makes the situation a whole lot better. All right, anything else on IBRIS you want to discuss?
No, we'll continue bringing up this project throughout this movie.
Yeah,
because I mean, it does play, despite never being named, it does play a significant role in this movie.
Yeah.
You should have spent a day at the beach, get some sun.
Right. So marketing thought we could offset some of the costs by
Enough
selling...
about cost. John Hammond entrusted me with this dying wish, and not once did he mention profit. Spare no expense, he used to say.
I appreciate that, but the reality of operating a theme park requires...
Don't forget why we built this place, Claire. Jurassic World exists to remind us how very small we are, how new. You can't put a price on that. Now, please, we're flying. Breathe.
All right, Dave, ready to get into minute 20?
Yeah.
As when in minute 19 of Jurassic World, the pig had lured the raptor squad out into the clearing, and Owen went to work, yelling down hay and clicking his clicker, indicating for them to follow. As we open on minute 20, the raptors fight amongst each other, and Owen yells out to them to watch it and to tighten it up. He wants them to stay in formation. At the 16-second mark, after the raptors hold formation for a few seconds, Owen says good, and we're moving, and starts clicking again, and walks along the catwalk above the animals. As he starts to move and lead the animals to another section of the pen, they start to fight each other. At the 23-second mark, he stops by a steel bucket hanging from the catwalk, and yells out hold again, and says that's good, as the raptors once again focus on him. To reward the animals for their behaviour, he starts throwing them down a rat, one each, lastly with Blue, saying this one's for you. At the 50-second mark, after the animals are fed, he raises his hand and yells hold one more time. He lifts his hand, yelling eyes up, and as one, the raptors all lift their heads into the sky. And as the minute ends, he drops his hand, yelling go, and the raptors all run off to play. And this ends minute 20 of Jurassic World. As we continue into minute 20, Alan Command, the raptor's eyes on me sort of failing a bit. There's he calls Blue's name again, clicks his clicker more, and that's when the lead raptor snaps her head back up, so she was obviously off looking at something else. Alan points to her and says, watch it. He's obviously been talking to these animals for some time now. Mm-hmm. But do you think they are understanding the non-commands?
I think they're like my old dachshund. They do understand them, they choose not to.
Choose to ignore? Well, that's on the right. Charlie's getting a bit distracted, and that's when Owen yells, "Charlie, don't give me any of that shit." Which
they always had the glove off, man. Don't give me that shit. Excuse me.
He points to another, yelling, "Delta, lock it up," and trying to get him to hold formation here. Again, showing really we don't really get what's going on here, but this is sort of the culmination of a lot of time in training trying to get the animals to follow his command and hold position. Because that's when he pauses and looks down over the animals saying good, then starts clicking more, and we're moving. And they start moving around the paddock as he walks along the catwalks. And we cut down to ground level as Owen starts walking along the catwalk. As soon as he does, the raptors start snapping and hissing at each other. So there's not a lot of control, as you were saying before, with the IBRIS Project. Blue's sort of there doing it, and they're sort of just sort of following her. And
mm-hmm.
I don't know how Hoskins isn't noticing this as well. Like, we're going to get the comment later that this was a happy day. Normally it doesn't end like this. Well, you can see why.
Mm-hmm.
But Owen crosses another catwalk and stops in the middle where a bucket is tied up to the railing and sort of yells hold again, and then bringing the raptors, or snapping them back to attention, and he yells to the raptors, yeah, that is good, that is damn good, and clicks some more of that damn clicker, and I wonder if they're just looking at I just wonder if they're looking at him because the food's there. If I'm in my kitchen, the dog's looking at me, it's not because the dog cares about what I'm doing, it's because I've got a steak in my hand or something.
I'm sure that it has a bit to do with it, but at the same time, it's like Pavlov's dog. You click the button and their mouth starts salivating regardless of the mice being there or not, you know? And so does Pavlov's raptors.
And we get a shot here too of Charlie and Blue, and Blue's sort of snarling, which it's like she realises, yeah, we're being trained here, and I don't like it. It's a little snarl there. I thought it was an interesting characteristic, but that's when Owen starts throwing dead rats down to the animals one at a time, calling their names. He stops when it's Blue's turn, telling her this one's for you, which again, that bond he's made with Blue as the alpha.
I remember again referring back to the Lego game profiles that it's mentioned that Owen feeds Blue last to remind her that she's not the alpha, because this whole movie, again, like we keep pointing out, the raptors follow Blue, they don't follow Owen. Blue follows Owen, so he feeds her last to keep her in line and make her not think that she's more important than she is in the pack structure.
Yeah, I think when we get when the boys get to the raptor paddock later, they ask who's the alpha, and he says you're looking at him or something, and I think they raise the question, what happens if they don't follow you or something, and we don't get an answer to that. We see it later with the Indominus, but
well, I do remember, I can't remember if it was in the movie or if it was part of the deleted scene where they ask him, are they safe? And he's like, no, they're not.
Yeah.
He does not like the field test happening. He does not believe that they're ready. He acknowledges they are dangerous animals and that they're not fully domesticated yet.
Well, I think the only thing we get in the film is the fact that if I don't do it, they're going to make someone else do it or something.
True. Yeah.
But dead rats, they're not even chewing them, they're just swallowing them whole. I don't know what if these taste good. They obviously haven't enjoyed the taste of human flesh yet, so maybe later on they'll discover something a little bit more tasty.
I'm sure it's like dog food, you know? I mean, their palate probably isn't as developed as ours, so they really don't mind the flavor. It's meat to them.
Yeah, yep. But we cut back down to ground level again as he yells, hold one more time, and then eyes up, and as he does it, we get the shot of all four raptors raise their heads as one. So they've learnt this trick pretty well. They're all doing this in unison. And as the minute ends, Owen pauses for some time, then drops his hand and yells, go, and the raptors all snarl and run off into the paddock to play. And that's the last we see of them for a couple of minutes.
Mm-hmm. I think it is disappointing that of the 4 raptors, we get head close-ups of 3 of them, but not my favorite, which is Echo. Because Echo is a sassy little one here that we'll